I just picture us on this golf cart, zooming past rows and rows and rows, this way and this way, of stored goods. I think I just was praising God for these people that think like that.
Hello Saints, my name is Jeff. I'm a pastor in Utah, exploring everything I can about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I am here with my amazing, wonderful, beautiful wife in this video because we had an amazing experience that we would like to share with you.
Hello.
So a few years ago, whenever I was visiting Utah, before we moved here, I was with my Latter-day Saint friend David Snell, and we were driving down the interstate close to downtown Salt Lake, and there was a gigantic grain silo.
So I don't know if you can see those grain towers out there.
Yeah.
That is Welfare Square. That's kind of one of the centers of humanitarian aid for the church.
So when he started to explain it to me, I was really fascinated.
This was probably one of your most suggested videos. People wanted us to check this out. And it's pretty astounding, actually, what we discovered.
Ready?
Let's go.
The first area that we went into was called the Bishop's Storehouse. This is something that technically isn't really unique to just Welfare Square, in that there are Bishop Storehouses all over the world. And this is essentially like a grocery store without cash registers. It's where you basically, if you're in need, can fill out a request and go into this place and receive just normal food items or toiletries or household living things. And it's really well stocked with almost anything someone would need, even more so than like a food pantry.
And if I'm understanding correctly, it's called the Bishop's Storehouse because typically this goes through the ward, through the bishop. Like, they find out people are in need and they can send in, like, mark down what they want or need for this individual. So It typically runs through the ward.
Yeah, but I think that someone can show up if they need to, and there are people there that can help determine what the need is and how they can provide for those needs. And one thing that is unique about a lot of the products that are provided in the Bishop's Storehouse is that they're not just like random brand names that people donate or even off-brand surplus. These are items that are actually, most of them, produced by the church, whether we're talking about the canned vegetables or the bread or even the meat. They have farms all over the country, and they had a cannery, which we'll show you in just a second, at Welfare Square, where they actually have essentially their own brand of food and items, which is where we went next. We walked sort of through the back of the Bishop's Storehouse, through a storage warehouse, and behind that there was a full-on bakery where there were a bunch of volunteers baking bread, cutting the bread, slicing the bread, bagging the bread. It was a full-on bread-making factory.
And it smelled amazing.
It did smell pretty good. And it tasted really good too.
Yeah, we got to try it.
Good bread.
That's the one thing too that we were really sort of impressed by, is a lot of the food that we tasted, whether it's the bread or the chocolate milk or the cheese, was actually really good.
Yeah.
So they don't like cut corners when it comes to providing for people. They really seem like they're wanting to offer the best that they can to the people that they are serving.
Right.
So from there, we actually went across a parking lot. We were going to go in the cannery, but I think they were doing some renovations, so we couldn't go in there. But from what I understand, they produce a significant amount of canned goods. So after we sort of passed by there, we went into the building where they take care of all of their dairy. And it, again, was a full-on, I don't know what you would call it, dairy factory, where they had huge vats of milk, and there were big areas where they were separating the curds in the whey so they can make cheese and cream and ice cream. And again, this is something that was fully, from what we could tell, staffed by certain shifts and rotations of all kinds of volunteers.
Yeah, it reminded me of like in 4th grade when I would go to like Perry's. I'm from New York, so we went to Perry's ice cream and like saw it's run exactly like that.
Yeah.
All the machinery is there. I remember we walked through, and as we were walking through, they were like cleaning their floors, like flooding them, rinsing them, cleaning them. They're legit. What they're doing is legit.
Yeah, and one of the coolest things that we saw while we were walking around in that dairy factory were ways that they have provided some really significant and life-saving relief to various parts of the world through what they've produced in their dairy factory.
They were sharing a story about how they had to be very thoughtful and considerate with the resources that they were sending overseas, because there was an area that was very famished and they can't process metabolized food in the same way because they're so famished. But it was really beautiful how they were thoughtful and considerate. Food is great, but it's not helpful if it can't be metabolized because you're so famished.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing because it was literally a technology that they sort of perfected, and it saved a lot of people's lives. And again, like beyond sort of this amazing operation where they're saving people's lives across the world, it was also really tasty. They insisted that we taste the cheese, and they insisted that we drink some of the chocolate milk, and it was really good.
It was really good. I think I had seconds.
I think I did too. And I think the ice cream, and I could be wrong about this, but I think the ice cream that they make is also what they serve at BYU.
Oh.
Like the creamery. Don't quote me on that. I thought that's what they said.
I feel like maybe now that you're saying that, that's sounding familiar.
Yeah, I mean, it's that good. It's so good that they can sell it at BYU football games or even on campus with students, and they'll eat it.
I was trying to be appropriate in the moment. As we're walking by, we're observing through glass everyone doing their jobs and doing them very well. And he's explaining to us as we're walking by what is happening and what they do in certain rooms. And at one spot, you weren't looking at me, but I had started to kind of giggle to myself because in my head, I made a joke that I was like, don't say that out loud.
Well, wasn't it an area where they were actually talking about how they were sealing the cheese so that it would be preserved?
Yeah, they were saying that this was like the cheese sealing room. And I just had the thought, like, you guys do a lot of sealing in your Latter-day Saint world.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, evidently sealing rooms are really important in Latter-day Saint buildings.
So we've learned.
So from there, we walked across the parking lot again, and we actually went into a facility that Joy was pretty well familiar with. It's called Deseret Industries, and she had never been to this one, which was essentially a gigantic thrift store, but she has been to many Deseret Industries around the valley because girl be doing a lot of thrifting.
Yeah, we've never really talked about this on here before, but I am a reseller on Poshmark, and so I frequent the thrift stores in the area, and the Deseret Industries is actually in my world, a pretty big difference compared to where we come from. There's none of those in St. Louis. There's many more Goodwills, but not DI. So I was very excited about this part, and the person that we were with was letting me go on my way searching for things. So I purchased a few things at the DI to resell.
Yeah, it's essentially a retail store, like a department store, and they have clothes and they have furniture. They have furniture that people from the church actually make, and they have lawnmowers and suitcases.
They have everything.
They have everything.
Everything.
But the other half of the building is this gigantic warehouse where you have all of these volunteers who are receiving donations, they're organizing it, and it just was this smooth, really peaceful operation, and it was just really pleasant to see, again, how many people were serving in a way that they seemed focused, they seemed like they were doing their best, and that just translates into just like the overall vibe as we're in this place where, let's be honest, some thrift stores can feel a little bit sketchy, but not this one. It just seemed very welcoming. The
other thing that's really beautiful about it isn't just that they're receiving donations and selling clothes cheaper to people or products cheaper to people, but it's an opportunity to hire people that are having a hard time finding work for different reasons. So it's kind of neat to see how the whole system is actually benefiting those in need.
Yeah, but again, that was at this point what really started to settle in with me is there's something really powerful about how much effort and intentionality and organization and excellence was being committed to helping people. There were even places that we didn't go into, close to Deseret Industries, that were like counseling centers, or somebody was telling us a story about somebody who was driving across the country and they were in a bad car accident, and while some of the family was in the hospital and they lost their luggage and things like that, they were able to come directly to Welfare Square and people helped them figure out what they needed to get back on the road so that they can continue on their journey. There's just a really amazing empathy and benevolence that, like I said, it was pretty powerful.
Yeah, their organization and structure is so well equipped to meet lots and lots and lots of needs, and I think it's kind of under the radar a little bit.
Yeah. So from there, we left Deseret Industries. We walked past the gigantic grain silo that I initially had seen, and it all kind of started to make sense as to what this welfare arm of the church looks like. But we were then taken across town to the Humanitarian Center, which was in a completely different space, a different building. And this was an area that was focused a lot more on international relief and international help. So the first area that we saw in the Humanitarian Center was an area where they make these buckets and boxes specifically for areas where there has been some sort of natural or man-made disaster, where there's immediate need for certain critical supplies.
So like cleaning supplies,
toiletries, and we had the opportunity to help compile all the things for a couple of these relief boxes with a couple of missionaries who were serving their calling there at the Humanitarian Center. And it was fun just to feel like, hey, anybody can just walk in and contribute to helping out.
I was trying to race Jeff to see if I could fill more boxes than him.
She's a much better humanitarian than I am.
So that particular spot that we were filling boxes and things, that was actually a pretty simple task. And it was something that they communicated to us that we could, if we wanted to ever bring our kids and our family to come and serve and give them an opportunity to be serving in that way. Not just there, I mean, there's lots of other places, but there are definitely tasks that are manageable for young children to do, which is really beautiful that they'll allow people to come in and volunteer in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Their arms are wide open to anybody that wants to help out. One of the other cool spots we saw at the Humanitarian Center was an area where there were people literally making handmade quilts, like beautifully designed, sturdy, amazing quilts.
Yeah, quilts are a lot of work. They require a lot of time, and they had tons and tons of different patterns and colors and fabrics there. And there were several people there just like constantly working. There were also some people sitting around doing finishing touches on quilts. One of the people that are there working specifically on the quilts, she was really eager to make us a quilt, and that meant so much. The time and the heart that goes into something like that. And so we received a beautiful quilt from this Humanitarian Center.
They're not just making blankets that are gonna dissolve after 3 or 4 uses. They are legit, sturdy, beautifully made, handcrafted quilts, and that was really touching for us to be able to receive one of those. From there, we went to a very large area that was really unbelievable. There were thousands and thousands, maybe even more, hundreds of thousands of items of clothes that people were going through and organizing. I think most of which were going overseas or going to specific areas where clothing items are needed.
They had shared with us a statistic, and I'm not remembering the exact percentage, but they were talking about the overall amount of clothing and donations that they receive, how there's actually only a very small percentage of that actually goes to DIs. Everything else they sort through at this warehouse. They jam-pack pallets full of clothing that is usable to be able to send to people in need overseas.
Yeah. And again, one of the coolest things about all this is all of the workers were people who you can tell were just recently coming to America. You can tell that they're still trying to figure out the culture and even the language. And those are the workers that were employed to help organize these clothes. And I know that they get paid.
Yeah, not only are they being taught how to work here, but also they were being trained in English to be able to communicate better with the people that they were working with.
Yeah.
And again, the same system where here they are doing something for people in need. It's really a beautiful system and process that they have in place that is helping the people that are in need, and they're maximizing their ability to do that, whether they're helping or whether they're being helped.
Yeah. And once we finished there, they had something else to show us. Just when we thought that we were done seeing all of the amazing things that the church is doing.
This was one of the longer of our, I call them Latter-day Saint field trips.
Yeah.
This is one of the longer of our field trips, and we had already seen so much and learned so much, and it was kind of blowing our socks off already. But then they took us
to the Bishop's Storehouse warehouse, which was this absolutely gigantic, massive facility, newly built actually, that from what I think they were explaining to me, it was the size of like 7 or 8 Walmart supercenters. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of square feet. And what was in this gigantic facility? Well, when we walked in, it was just looked like a beautiful office building and a wonderful little atrium. We went down this hallway with just unbelievable art. And again, the art was showing not just religious art, which is always beautiful in a Latter-day Saint setting, but also where they've done certain relief, humanitarian relief, and where they've been able to just serve people. And then we went into this warehouse and they basically said, okay, everybody hop on a golf cart. It's time for us to show you everything here. And when we say golf cart, we're talking like, I'm pretty sure it's seated like 6 to 8 people.
Yeah, and they drove us through, and they were driving fast enough that I had like wind blowing through my hair.
Yes.
So they were having to cover a lot of ground
Yeah.
to get us through this whole warehouse. And that to me, when I think about the day that we were there, was the most impactful and like memorable thing. And I just picture us on this golf cart whizzing past. It kind of makes me emotional a little bit. Zooming past rows and rows and rows and rows upon rows, this way and this way, of stored goods that they had prepared and very highly organized. And I just was overwhelmed. Like, I just felt like we were whizzing past so much goodness. And it's God's goodness. Like, all goodness is God's goodness. So being in this room was like overwhelming.
And it wasn't just a room. Again, this is multiple gigantic rooms where you have these pallets that are like 12 high and 4 deep. And one of the things that we were talking about that day is how every single item in these pallets represented a specific individual who is needing something or who will need something at some point. So when you think about it from that standpoint of the humanity of the people that the members of the church are wanting to provide for and help, it really became a powerful display of what we can do for people, for others, for our fellow humans when we take our time to commit to one another and recognizing that in this fallen world, people are going to have needs, and where we have surplus, we want to help people.
Hearing about how they do things so thoroughly, how thoughtful they are, how careful they are, how resourceful they are about every little detail of their process. I think I just was praising God for these people that think like that, like how beautiful and how much that honors God to be so careful and to be organized and to have order. And specifically in this warehouse, they were sharing that they utilize workers, volunteers that come in, and he was actually sharing, and I thought this was beautiful too, that specifically where they have to pay attention to inventory and they're having to do a lot of calculating of numbers and things like that, they utilize some people that are autistic. And how beautiful, there's a gift with autism and they're utilizing that gift in order to help that individual have a place to work and also to do their processes even more efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, and one of the other cool things they were sharing about this area is this is where they can organize massive service projects. So if there are large churches or communities that want to come in and help pack boxes or organize or things of that nature, this is an area where they can do that. As a matter of fact, during the NBA All-Star game that was held in Salt Lake City a few years ago, this is where the NBA players came to pack boxes and to volunteer in a massive scale so that they could just contribute again to the generosity that is the extension of this effort. So I typically try not to soapbox on this channel as I'm learning things and sharing my opinions, but this is just one area where I might need to step up on the soapbox, where there might be people watching this and they're like, oh, are you just trying to, pander to the LDS church because, we know that you don't agree with them on certain doctrinal things. And my response to that is no. Like, there is something beautiful and powerful when exploring everything that this church represents and stands for. I think it would be disingenuous just for me to focus on those tension points where there's areas areas where there's doctrinal differences or worship practice differences. This is something that I believe is, no matter what context, there's something godly about caring for your fellow man, helping people in need. And it's something that even if there's an evangelical who is watching this and they're saying, wow, the LDS Church does a lot of great things here, but what about their belief in this or their belief in that? I'm here to say, from the highest point of the soapbox, to say, no yeah buts. I don't think that this is a space where we need to yeah but anything. This is an amazing effort that is clearly done with a heart of generosity and care for our neighbor and our fellow men, and that is one of the greatest commandments. And I think it's a beautiful thing that the Latter-day Saint culture prioritizes this, and let's be honest, they do it in the name of Christ, which I don't want to breeze past. I think that that is incredibly important.
One of the things that I continued to hear them say, no matter where we were in our little tour, was that what they were doing was to love God and to love others. And that is so simple, and yet that is the gospel.
Right.
I would quite simply say, no matter where compassion is always Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. So there are a lot of people who help make this happen. And we could list all of the names. It would take a very long time. But you know who you are. We are so incredibly grateful for the day that you showed us around Welfare Square, the Humanitarian Center, the Bishop's Storehouse, warehouse area. You are super accommodating. You gave us more information than we were even able to remember and fit into this video. But thank you so much for those of you who showed us this really important and beautiful aspect of the Latter-day Saint Church. And we are really looking forward to actually taking our family to some of these areas and doing some service as well.
Yeah, thank you to all the people that were with us, showing us, teaching us, spending time with us that day. But thank you in general to all the volunteers, to the systems, to the processes, to the church that offers this compassion and care in such a practical way for so many people in need.
Absolutely.
For people that are curious about what they do specifically, caring.churchofjesuschrist.org gives all the different ways that they help and the services that they offer.
And just a little bit of a tease, a little sneak peek. In 2025, we are going to be doing a Hello Saints service gathering of some sort. And I can pretty much guarantee that I'm going to be working with some of the connections that I made at Welfare Square and some of these other areas where we can all go together and serve our community and help just serve our neighbors with the LDS Church and their efforts to do this on a regular basis. So more information about that will be coming soon. But in the meantime, why don't you hit a thumbs up on this video and subscribe? You can support us on Patreon if you'd like, but you don't have to. Maybe don't support us on Patreon and generously donate that to the efforts to help people in need. That would be great. Either way, no matter what you do, just keep coming back for more videos so we can continue to explore together, to learn together, to understand one another, and really to even celebrate one another, where we know that we are doing things that honor the Lord, help the people around us in need, and really be the hands and feet of Jesus in this world around us. So until next time, we'll see you later, Saints.